Hello class. In this video, I want to talk about expectations for the review of literature or literature review. And also I want to talk about culturally responsive positive behavior intervention systems. So first and foremost, if this is your first time writing a literature review, some people may find it difficult to do. So in this module, I will provide a template to organize your literature. Now, I'm only requiring minimum of 5 articles. You can do more if you want. And the way, when it comes to doing a literature review, to write a strong literature review, literature review is pretty much a synthesis of scholarly articles, peer review articles. You do not want to do a summary of the article. So, in order to better help you navigate writing this literature review, I created a template or organizer where you'll define your research question and your focus. That's step one. The first step before anything is identify what's your research question. What do you want to know? What do you want to discover? What do you want to find out? And once you find that out, you will start researching articles on that topic, focus on that question. So you want to make sure you have your citation, APA format. Make sure you identify the purpose in their research question, the method they use, and the key findings. What did they find? And then also relevance to the topic, how relevant is this topic today, right? So with these articles, I'm not sure if you guys read the research articles. I'm assuming you have, this far in your graduate program. But with research articles, different sections. So it's like, do you have to go through the whole thing to get a literature review? Not necessarily, depending on how interesting that article is or research is. You might want to, but it's certain key areas in order to, write your literature review, successfully write your literature review, that you have to pay attention to, and that's definitely the methods and the findings. And then clearly you need to know the research question, everything, but the methods and the findings, you identify what did they do, what did they discover, and what worked and what didn't work. So, the aim, like I said, once again, the aim is 5 peer review articles. And once you get that done, and once you identify articles, you want to organize it in those separate sections. And then once you do that, you want to identify the emerging theme. So out of 5 or more articles, what theme do you notice? Like, say that 3 out of 5 articles identify that this positive behavior intervention strategy worked for students who were nonverbal in their behavioral issues, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just make something up. And so then what authors supported that, right? And then what connections you made between that theme. So within those 5 articles, you might identify 1 or 2 themes, maybe 3. But you do not want to identify literature that's all like scattered. You want to the key is find the connection between the literature. So once again, it's not a summary of the article. You want to find a connection between the literature, and then you want to identify the gaps in the literature that you could further research. And so, for example, effectiveness, a theme could be effectiveness of positive behavior intervention strategies in low-income schools. That could be a theme for the research you found. Or challenges in conducting functional behavior assessments, or cultural biases in discipline, etc. And so, like I said before, step 4 is like the gaps in the literature. What did they not mention that you probably want to do further research on? And then at the end of it, you want to do practical implication for educators or practitioners. So now, based on the literature you found and based on your research, after synthesizing those articles, what should you tell educators, future educators and practitioners? What should you inform them about? What does that mean for educators? How can it inform the classroom practices and interventions or policy? And so while drafting your literature review, you want to, in the introduction, you want to define the topic and the importance of the topic. And then you want to group your sources by themes. So like I said, you can have 2 or 3 themes within those 5 literature reviews. And then summarize, at the end of it, your conclusion, you want to summarize the key findings and suggestions for educators and practitioners as far as so they can form their practice and do better in their job. So that's that. So once again, you guys will have 2 weeks to complete a literature review. from my experience as a TA and as someone who worked with graduate students, I found that people sometimes have a difficult time with actually completing a literature review. The best way I found, when I completed a systematic literature review myself, that was a little tougher. I found it helpful to use Excel, or if you don't want to use Excel, use Microsoft Word and put in to put in your table, and then you're able to actually see it. After you read every article, you can see the areas where, you can see the emergent themes, because you actually put it all in one table. So it's very helpful to do that, and then also get started early. Do not wait to last minute to throw together a literature review if you want to be successful with writing it. So, and once again, if you need help, after everything I provide for you, if you still need help and assistance with understanding the process or understanding how to search the literature review, to find a peer review article, that's nothing. With peer review articles, it can be later, no more than 10 years away. So like 2016, it can be any earlier than 2016. So if you need help researching, identifying, and putting in certain words, we could set up a meeting for that. And I actually, class time, I will show you guys how to do that. And so next topic that I want to go into, because I already went through the literature, now I want to talk about culturally responsive positive behavior intervention strategies. So oftentimes, a lot of schools, I'm not going to say every school, but a lot of schools within the United States have positive behavior intervention systems, school-wide positive behavior intervention systems, but many of them do not have culturally responsive. And so there's a professor who worked for University of Wisconsin named Dr. Aiden Ball, who introduced the culturally responsive behavior intervention system, and I actually want to implement his study. That's another topic for another day. But pretty much, positive behavior intervention system, they're a tiered system that promotes positive behavior in schools, preventative and data driven. So when it comes to culturally responsive, it's not like the traditional positive who may ignore cultural backgrounds, and it's disproportionate discipline rates of marginalized students being Black students, minority students like Hispanic, students who speak a different language, women, sometimes females, and then students with disabilities. So with a culturally responsive system, you include the students in creating the rules for the school and the discipline matrix, right? So I'm going to explain how Dr. Aiden Ball, example of a school-wide one. So for Dr. Aiden Ball, he suggested that it's a 3-year study, I believe. And the first year you go in and see what the current, system, the positive, current structure of the school as far as discipline matrix and reward system, everything else. And then for each, say in middle school, say we're at middle school, and there's a 6th, 7th, 8th grade. For each grade level, you'll pull two students who represent the student body. So to culturally responsible, so a minority, someone different background, marginalized. And so then you get 2 students from 7th grade, 2 students from 6th grade, 2 students from 8th grade, right? And then you also pick parents. You bring the community, bring 2 parents for each grade level to be a part of that learning lab. It's a learning lab where everyone participates in this conversation. Then you could get 2 teachers for each grade level, and everyone is included in how they want to, discipline students, how they want to reward students, and what systems they want to be in place. And that's what makes it culturally responsive, because you're not just doing it from a point of view as an educator or a point of view as an administrator. You're doing it from a point of view as the community, and as well as with the students. So when key with culturally responsive strategies, you want inclusive expectations. So align behavior expectations with students' cultural norms. So when you have a classroom or you're dealing with a student, you want to identify their cultural norms and understand them better. And then relationship building. You focus on empathy, trust, and understanding. That's very important when creating culturally responsive positive behavior intervention strategies. And then once again, as I said before, the student voice. You want to hear their perspective. So if Johnny misbehaves and you ask Johnny, like, so if, say role play, and you say, well, if this was me and I did, and I behaved, well, how will you, discipline me as a teacher? I did role play with my students before, and it's really helpful and works, and they get to see your side. So it pretty much, you ask him his rewards, and if it's a punishment, what you believe is a reasonable punishment for this issue or what you have done, right? And then staff training. So you want to train, like with culture responsibility, you want staff to understand. As a teacher, you want to understand like the implicit bias that some of us may possess. We all have implicit bias. It's not obvious, but we may all have it. And so you want to acknowledge diverse communication styles and respect all students' home culture. So you want to bring the home culture into the school setting. You want to really understand how things are done, so you can bring it to school. And so that's what culturally responsive. So culturally responsive positive behavior intervention strategies pretty much improve equity and effectiveness within the classroom or within the school. So if you guys have any questions, so for what I want you guys to think of a way to improve your positive behavior intervention strategy within your classroom, and how can you make it better as far as make it more culturally responsive for your students. What ways can you do that? All right, guys, have a nice day.